Welcome to Exploring Esports, your gateway into the essentials of each esport with the experts. I'm your host, Renessa, and this week we're loading into some Counter-Strike Global Offensive with OnFireAnders. Now, Anders, I'm not letting you get a word in edgewise here. Before we do anything, important question. What is the first thing you check on your phone when you wake up in the morning?
The price of gold on the spot market right now. It's so messed up, but it's true.
Good to know. Okay, now you can introduce yourself. Now that our audience knows that little tidbit, how do people know you? What do they know you as?
I guess people know me as a Counter-Strike commentator, which I've been doing for a while now. So I think that's probably the main thing. Maybe for crazy tweets on Twitter, that's my secondary occupation. So probably those two things right now.
And now they're going to know you as being the most knowledgeable about gold prices. So that's another thing to add.
Well, at least like what it currently is like on a day-to-day basis. It's a really unhealthy obsession. Let's put it like that.
Okay. Well, let's take a step, rewind all the way back. This series is about kind of helping people get into esports that maybe they aren't already following, which means we go way back. What got you into Counter-Strike?
Oh man, well, so way back when I was like, I don't know how would it is, 1999. I'm from 85. I can't do the math, but I wouldn't have been that old. And they had these like PC banks, like these LAN cafes that we would go to in Copenhagen, which was about maybe 45 minutes by train from where I lived. But my parents said it's fine. You guys can go. Just try and be safe and all the rest of it. And I kind of, that's where I got introduced to Counter-Strike at like an incredibly early alpha version or something like that. And that was in 99. And then I don't know, like that game was somehow different from everything else that we'd played. And we kept coming back, and we would do these like evenings or nights where we'd play from midnight till 8 in the morning. So we would just stay in there. It was like you booked an 8-hour, thing, and it cost like maybe 10 euros or something like that. I mean, you would just play all night, and just really unhealthy. People were smoking in those rooms back then as well, so it's just like heavy smoke and kids just playing Counter-Strike. But it was wild. I mean, like that imprinted like that game in our brains, like at that point in time, and we couldn't really stop doing it. So
yeah, and now we're over 20 years later. Obviously, some things have changed, some things haven't. At DreamHack, we might still have overnight LAN parties where people play all night long. So some things never change. But for those playing now, new to the FPS genre, maybe new to the mouse and keyboard life, to be honest, I know we got a lot of those out there in the world. What would you say is the single most important thing that you need to learn to play Counter-Strike well? Like if you want to get better at it, what do you focus on? What's that important thing to learn?
I think that depends really heavily on where you want to sort of take your game, because I think it's possible to just play with friends and just have like a pretty decent time. And at that point, probably the quickest return on investment is just focusing on your mechanical skills. So, that'll solve a lot of problems early on. But if you want to go just like slightly above that, if you want to play slightly more competitively, maybe play with the same people and try to like, come up with some strategies, then, you get into like the strategic and tactical level, and you get into communication. And like, there are suddenly a lot of things that become way more important. Well, not more important, but they become important if you don't, put effort into it, I would say. So, the mechanical side is always important, but some of those other skills become really, really critical at some point. And I think, but also, I mean, the game is way more rewarding if you start doing that. So I would say probably, like some understanding of strategy and communication.
Mm-hmm. And communication, obviously, you're an esports commentator. Counter-Strike has a massive esports scene. And when you start getting really good communicating with a team, you might start looking at semi-pro or the pro scene. Or you're just a casual viewer that loves esports and wants a new game to watch. Now, Counter-Strike has had a storied history of how the competitive scene works. Right now, what's the overview that you would give someone of how competitive Counter-Strike, the league system, etc., all kind of comes together?
it's actually it's really wild how competitive it is, because we've been through these like eras. In the beginning of CS:GO especially, we had like NIP, the famous 87-0, LAN map streak and all the rest of it. And then we've had like different other teams. Astralis had like a long period where they were considered just probably the best team of all time.
Yeah.
But we've had Fnatic, there's just been all these different sort of teams that have taken over. But right now, it's not really clear what's happening. And part of that might be the reason because we're all playing online all of a sudden. So I feel like if you're joining Counter-Strike right now as a brand new viewer, well, you've got basically a top 5 where almost probably anyone can beat anyone. I mean, Na'Vi, the sort of Russian-Ukrainian team, seems to at the moment be the most powerful, which is really cool because it's something they've been struggling for a long time. They've always had the potential, they just never really had the consistency, but it seems like they're actually finding that now. Astralis, the former best team of all time, are struggling in their own ways that are hard to explain. The French team Vitality have suddenly come into a lot of trouble, and they had the best player in 2020, so and still do. So it's all like there's a lot of storylines even to the top 3. But what's really fun, and I think what's really interesting that's happening aside of an undercurrent, is we all know that when we come back at LAN, it's going to be so different, because Counter-Strike on LAN and online are just not the same things at all. So there's going to be like a really rude awakening for a lot of people when that happens. And I think even the people who know it's coming, like in the teams, the players, it's hard to prepare for mentally. I think it's going to be wild.
And so do you think that these teams, I'm curious if experience on LAN with those captains having that long track record is more beneficial online, or if you think younger, something to prove, maybe not as many expectations, is actually working out for them better. If you look at the competitive scene right now, would you say that experience or lack of expectations and pressure is kind of winning out for success?
I think at the beginning, the lack of expectations and the lack of pressure did a lot. And I think because people just thought, oh, whatever, we'll play online for like a couple of months, who cares? So I think the people with experience and that were used to playing with a lot of pressure in front of a big crowd, and I think they, you miss that even at some point. You think, well, I don't want to put so much effort into it unless I'm really feeling that atmosphere. But as the Corona thing, just dragged on, I think those people started to realize, wait a minute, if this is going to be a whole year of doing this, where you're going to crash out and burn out before we even get back to the LAN circuit again. So I think there was an initial phase where I think the young guns were probably having a better time of it, and were they just enjoyed sitting in their homes and just as you said, without the pressure of having a big audience. But I think now it's changed the other way, and you can tell that experience and having I think a lot of the teams as well have started to figure out that actually putting people together in some sort of a shared team house, at least when they're playing the games, not living there full time, but for the official matches, that seems to work way better than having people scattered all over Europe in their own apartments. Like, it seems to actually make a big difference. So that's really interesting, and I think I'm glad to see that the teams are taking it seriously, because it's a long time to be losing if you're going to be losing through all of Corona, basically.
Yeah, and it has changed the scene for sure, with everybody adjusting to it. Now, you've done your own changing of the scene a little bit. If we want to shift into resources maybe that exist out there. And now I know I'm really heavily hinting right here. I'm hinting, I'm about to ask a big question. Anders works on this product, this company called Skybox, that is really fascinating, and it's different. And it's this great tool that's available to kind of make the competitive environment and the replay environment so much more exciting. So give us your sales pitch. Tell us about it, because you can do way better than I can.
Oh, so one of the problems we actually have with the software slightly is that the sales pitch for Skybox is kind of hard to give, because it can do a lot of things. So you always want like a 30-second elevator pitch, I guess people talk about. But but really quickly, I would say our tool can be used by individual players who just want to improve their own sort of play style. You can upload your own demos or have it done automatically if you are on certain other services. And then we'll give you some pretty good overviews of what's going on in your game and where you're falling short. And there'll be a lot of stuff like that to sort of, help to analyze your game for you. Obviously, if you're in a team, it's going to be a better experience to review your own games, which is sort of an essential part of becoming a better team, is to figure out what actually went wrong and where did we make a big mistake here? So that's useful. But I mean, it's being used by tournament organizers as well. ESL have been really quick to pick it up and use it a fair bit. Chad over there, who's now doing casting with Alex, but used to be, like the prime analyst over there, and he did a lot of work to put it in there. We're reviewing live games through it now. So like there's a lot of things we could do. So that's from individual to team based to tournament organizer, and I think we could go even like beyond that in the future. So we've got like once we build the core of the tool, it can actually be used to do like 10 or 15 different things. It's crazy.
Yeah, anything.
So we're enjoying that, but
well, so to take a step back for those who don't know what Skybox is, essentially, from my understanding, it's sort of you put yourself in the 3D environment of Counter-Strike, right? And you kind of get to see what happens where in a match, and you get a lot more viewing angles and opportunities to understand what's going on. And I really like this because in a tournament situation, if you just go back and watch the stream of your game, you do not see every single positioning choice. You don't get to see all of that. With Skybox, like a coach is going to be able to go back, put themselves into the game and really see all the choices. I can't imagine how much it's going to level up the strategic ability of teams.
Well, so on that front, I mean, it's already being used by like a bunch of the pro teams right now in the top, which is really exciting, and the feedback that we're getting is really very good. And just to highlight what you were talking about in terms of like spectating and seeing what's going on, people kind of tend to forget that the game is being developed, by Valve, and every other game too, for that matter, to be played, not necessarily viewed. And I think Valve have done a lot to make the viewing experience better, but we're actually just trying to say, oh, but what if we made that our sole focus? What if we said, well, the game is already made to be played, so now what if we try to optimize like everything we could about viewing and all of the tools that might go with it? And there's a lot there that can be done, we found out. So yeah, but like I think we, like again, on the broadcasting side and on the storytelling side, it's going to be fun. And we've got some cool partnerships around the world with people that are sort of like, I guess our main idea and the goal with the project is to try and say, well, what if we can build Counter-Strike from the ground up? What if we can give like the least like the poorest team in the world, whoever have no resource, we can still give them this tool and have them use it to become much better. Then actually we're providing a huge service just in the Counter-Strike world in general.
Yeah, and just making the competitive scene that much better. And then for casual players, like you said, analyzing their matches, which I didn't realize it did. So I learned something today. We're going to transition a little bit here because we are DreamHack, and we've got a lot of history in the CS scene. And, if you don't know it all, Anders, I really want to hear what is like the best meme of Counter-Strike, or like the best story, the thing that everybody knows. What just something happening at an event, like a key clutch somewhere. Not the Olaf boost, all right? We're DreamHack. We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about that. You have to pick something else.
That's so tempting. If I could, there's something that's Olaf boost adjacent, because that is like, I guess one of them is like, hey, this is the Fnatic manager. I'm going to ask you to like take this video down, because that was obviously one of the things that was sort of like being rumored or talked about, as the before the Olaf boost even happened. So I think that one is pretty good. I see that pop up like more or less every day somewhere on the subreddit, which is really awesome. I mean, like there's a bunch of I think fairly mean ones around like individual players that are interesting and fun. There used to be some pretty cool ones about Device and the Danes, I think in general, tilting, which they did a lot. That's gone away now, so we kind of lost that meme. I mean, NA Counter-Strike, like NA anything actually, just just NA anything behind. I think that's still worth it. Like we should do what we can to keep that alive. We can't let them outlive that. So I think those are some of my favorite ones for right now. I think those work pretty well still.
All right, and keeping in vein with that, although maybe the Device question answered it, what is the team or the player, and there's two sides here, that either everyone will always cheer for, no matter what, no matter how terrible they are, or on the flip side, if you don't have that come to mind, is there someone that people always root against, like the anime villain of Counter-Strike? You can either give me a hero or a villain.
So, I mean, on the villain side, we don't do so well as we could, but actually the Swedish like Fnatic core in JW and Flushed really like did a lot to build into that, and that came off the back of the Olaf boost, right? So it's like they learned to live with it and sort of said, okay, fine, if we're going to be the ones that people are going to be mad at, I guess we'll go with it. So I actually think they've done a great job in turning it into like a little bit of a brand and doing that. Yeah, I think that those are it on the villain side for sure.
Okay. Any heroes, or Counter-Strike's not that wholesome?
I feel like they don't live like quite. I mean, maybe like you'd have to say probably Simple, because he is like the best player to ever touch the game. Like even not even close. I think at this point, to the second best, you get to take like the scope of his career. So there's no one that's gonna not respect Simple. I would say that's not possible. I think.
All right, fair enough. And then our last question before we give you a chance to do a little shout out for any projects you have upcoming. If you could change one thing about Counter-Strike, whether it's the competitive scene, game mechanics, deleting one of the teams, kicking out a talent you don't like, they keep taking your jobs, what if you could change one thing about it, what would it be?
I think I would try to fix the calendar if I could at all. I think that is the one thing that Counter-Strike is kind of struggling with, is just that there's so much Counter-Strike happening on any given week, and it's like that I don't know how to do it, and I guess no one does, which is kind of the problem, but that is probably the number one issue I would say at the moment.
Well, I think that was a good primer for both the veterans who are now going to make fun of NA Counter-Strike more. Thank you for that.
Yay.
As well as if you're new to the scene, I hope you found some useful info here. Before we let you go, what are your shout outs? Where can people find you? What are cool projects you want to promote?
Cool projects. Well, so people can find me, I guess, over on Twitter at OnFireAnders, but more recently they can find me at twitch.tv/Anders, because I started doing more streaming. Streaming not so much Counter-Strike at the moment. I'm streaming some Skybox stuff, so if people want to do like analysis, which I think is fun, we do that. But otherwise, I'm playing Ark, which is this mental survival game that I'm not that good at, but it's fun. So I'm trying to do that a little bit more.
There's a second one with Vin Diesel on its way. So
I know. Well, that's so part of my plan is to become like the #1 Ark streamer in the world. But before that happens, like it's going to be a long time. But we can all have dreams. So yeah, so that I think that's fun. But I think in terms of projects that I like out there, I mean, I guess just to keep it close to what we were talking about earlier, we did a project with a team in Peru with Skybox, where we sort of, we're trying to help them essentially get this, tool on the way, and they're doing some cool content around, Counter-Strike in Peru, and then we're doing something similar in Ireland with the Irish University League, and I think, both of those projects are really fun. Ireland and Peru aren't exactly thought of as Counter-Strike nations. And we have more of these sort of coming up. So I would just say, if you're out there and you're from some region that actually may have some talent, or just has, some few projects that are working there, then we'd be super interested to hear about that, because, again, a lot of Counter-Strike has gone into building the top 1% of like the competitive scene, and that's fine because it's actually worked really well. Like the top teams right now have a lot of funding, and they are really professional and they're really cool, and it's nice to see. But Counter-Strike has like 15 million players that are playing every month. Now, if we can convert even like 0.5% more of those into being full-time competitive players on a team, like get them up there, then we can change the whole game. So that's what we want to do. If we can do that, we can fix absolutely everything. So yeah, if you're out there and you have some sort of passion for doing these things, then I don't know, find a way to reach out and we'll talk.
All right. Well, his project is that he wants to fundamentally change the competitive scene.
Yes.
Admirable task. Totally small ask. Not a,
We'll do that.
thing.
No problem.
Well, I really appreciate your time. For everyone sitting and watching, thank you for exploring a little more about Counter-Strike. We get to do the fun. We are a content channel, so the whole like, subscribe, leave a comment. We really appreciate that. Algorithms love you. It's a wonderful thing. But yes, thank you for your time, and go enjoy some Counter-Strike. Have fun streaming some Ark.
Thank you so much.